Hey everyone, welcome to the Fortress of Solitude podcast. I'm your host, Sergio Pereira, and today I'm joined by, he's pretty much Fortress of Solitude's favorite writer, a comic book writer, definitely, Scott Snyder. And I mean, Scott and I have been chatting for many, many years, and Jared, our editor, actually said to me, you need to get Scott on the show. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely do need to get Scott on the show, but we've been waiting for the perfect opportunity because, obviously Scott had a new project launch and some cool stuff, but finally we have Scott on the show. And Scott, how the hell are you, man?
I'm great. It's so good to talk to you in front of everybody, Sergio. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So I'm glad we found a good opportunity for it. And I'm a huge fan, obviously, of Fortress, everything you guys do. And it's a thrill to be here, man. I'm really glad we could make it happen.
No, I'm super happy to have you here as well, man. It's the thing is, last year when we started the podcast, I remember you were launching it was a Kickstarter for Nocterra at the time. And I was still saying to Jared, it's going to be the perfect opportunity to get you on as soon as it launches, because obviously I already saw some of the artwork. I mean, I contributed to the campaign as well, and I've been impressed with everything that's been coming out. So obviously for you, this is a pretty big project, but it's also kind of a unique angle. I sort of got those vibes from, Vin Diesel's Pitch Black movies. That's literally the vibe I've been getting from it. So, I mean, obviously, how's the reception been so far? Are you pleased with it? What's been going on?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been really overwhelmed by the support. It's been great. I just wrote a piece for the back of issue 2 that was, thank you from the whole team. But it is it's so interesting because you and I have talked before privately, but I think it's a moment when we're all trying to figure out how to make the comics that we love and that we're passionate about and that are personal to us in ways that also sort of expand or experiment within kind of expected norms in the industry. So for Nocterra, it was a real journey for us, because we were initially going to publish it traditionally with Image. And as the pandemic neared and then hit, it became something where Image was shut down for a while. Comic stores were really hurting. And we weren't sure what to do, me and Tony. We didn't know if the best thing to do would be to shutter it for a while. And, for an artist especially who really can only work on one book at a time, the safe bet is always to go to Marvel or DC because they're not going to shut down regardless.
Yeah.
But we had been planning on doing creator-owned for so long, and we loved the story. And so we figured maybe the best thing to do would be to try to take pressure off Image to publish it or to fund it in any way or show any support, because their energies were much needed elsewhere in terms of other books and internally just for people working there to keep the lights on and everything. Was there a way to offer people something special that would give them a sense of connectivity or connection to the book, inclusion in the process of making it, give them a peek behind the window, the curtain, that kind of thing? And so we decided to give it a shot with this Kickstarter idea. We didn't know if it would bomb. I was ready for it. It was okay if it bombed, but the goal was always just to make the book solvent and to also offer something that would feel like you were getting a bridge to us as creators in our collaborative process in a moment when everything was pushing everybody further apart. And that's a lot with it's very much what the book's about too. I mean, we can get into that later, but as a father, you watch your kids go through all of this with the pandemic, and I've got a widespread, we have a baby that was a bit of a surprise. We've got a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I've seen the kind of effects across this whole wide expanse of childhood. And, this is one of those books that means a lot to me to be written for my 14-year-old to be able to read with me. A lot of the things that we've experienced in the pandemic, me and him in particular, staying up late watching things that are, the R-rated sort of things that I thought were important movies and books and, things that he's old enough now for that influenced me in a big way, that were big inspirations. And so this book kind of exists in that space. But the thing I'm trying to get at is just that we wanted to make something that was transparently, what it is, meaning we weren't trying to gouge people for money, or we weren't trying to, sell it twice or any of that stuff. It was look, you don't have to buy it. If you buy this, it will help us make the book regardless of whether or not we can publish it at Image at any given point. It'll give you hopefully a sense of connection to us. And if not, no worries whatsoever. And luckily, It did better than we thought, and we were able to fund the book for 7 or 8 issues, and I was able to put a little bit of the money towards Chain, the next book I'm doing, and get Best Jacket up and running, and we're just super grateful. I can promise you, though, out of it, too, like, Tony was teasing me the other day, because, I have, like, all of his page rate, all of Tomeo's page rate, Will, the editor, I already paid him the editorial fee for the whole book. Letter, Darren, he's a good friend, too, have his rate. I didn't take a page rate or do anything. I'm not making anything until we make royalties, so, Tony was all like, let me slip you money under the table from my pay trade. No. He's a great partner, because I don't know I guess he didn't realize, but I was like, so for everybody that supported it, I just want to say thanks. It allows me to really live a dream, creatively this year, and make books that I care about without, at least with this one and the next one with Image, worrying about whether or not we can afford to do it. Because I know I'm like giving you the longest answer in the world to so
no, go ahead.
This will set like a precedent. You'll see you get like 2 questions the whole interview. But for those of you out there that are wondering, like, doing an indie book is tough, just because when I was coming up and we did Wytches, for example, Jock and I squirreled that book away on the side while we were doing Detective and Batman and all that kind of stuff together, because when you do one, a lot of the time, at a place like Image, the benefit is that you retain all the ancillary rights, all the movie rights, all that. They're incredibly generous. But generally, you make the book on your own, and then they distribute it, and then you start to see money when the royalties come in, and they're great with royalties and that. But by the time the royalties come in, you're usually working on about issue 5. So it takes about 7 or 8 months of working in the dark to be able to start to recoup that. And it's, again, like, especially starting out, it's a great system. You have other work, you're doing it on the side. But for me, I'm at a point in my life right now where I just really wanted to commit to doing creator-owned and not DC and not Marvel for a little bit. I'm so happy with where DC is with Marie and all the creators they're bringing in. I love the teams there. Obviously, James Tynion is like my blood, like my brother, but Josh Williamson, but also Ram V and Joel Jones and Becky Cloonan, and like up and down. They have so many great people. Tom Taylor. But for me, it was like, I've been here 10 years. It's in a great spot. Marie's one of my best friends. I need to just take a break. And so to be able to do that, like, I can't afford, I can afford Tony for some issues, but I can't afford Tony to match his DC page rate for 6 or 7 issues with 3 kids and support another book on the side. And there's no way to do more than like one thing in that way. And so it became about, how do I get all of this up and running? And so the Kickstarter really allowed me to jumpstart a whole series of books that I'm excited to announce later this year. So anyway, I don't even remember what you asked. I feel like I've got the longest essay answer of all time.
Well, it's cool, man, because the most important thing that I also got out of that as well, and it's something which I've also been feeling a lot lately, was something you mentioned about, with Marvel and DC, obviously doing creator-owned stuff. And I've kind of realized, like, a lot of the best stuff in comics at the moment is coming out from, creator-owned books. Effectively, I find like a lot of the stuff is coming out that is super exciting and people getting into it. And I'm even noticing, for example, the likes of Netflix and, Amazon Prime and a lot of these places, they're picking up a lot of these IPs for all this creator-owned stuff. I mean, look at The Boys, for example, that's, just been blowing it up on Amazon. And also, I mean, you've got The Old Guard as well on Netflix. So it seems like creator-owned at the moment, it's really hot, basically, to quote, Zoolander, it's really hot right now. And I just like, and that's the thing. It's so impressive to see that stuff is there. But obviously with Nocterra as well, I think because I've been following the cycle for quite some time now, for quite a long time. You guys were always really good with communication in terms of what was happening. When there've been delays, when something's happening. I mean, you guys have been very transparent, which I think is really good when it comes to Kickstarter, because that's one of the things that people get really angry about, in a sense. You contribute to Kickstarter campaign, and then some of these creators, they go radio silent, and you're like, oh man, did I just get scammed? But definitely not in this case. Like, you guys have been super communicative, and always what's happening with the book. But also at the same time, it's been such a long time coming. Did you ever feel like, man, I just want to release this book right now? Because obviously you've been talking about it for like quite a few months. I mean, how many months?
We're working on issue 6 right now. So I mean, I've been dying to release it. I mean, especially because it kind of jumpstarts everything else that I'm doing. I mean, I got kind of reprimanded by some of my fellow creators in the group of Best Jacket books that I'm doing, because I started to talk a little bit too freely about things coming up before they're officially announced. But
yeah,
we're really going to announce a whole slew of books in the summer at different places. Some at one publisher, some at another, some all over the place. And the benefit of Best Jacket was that I can talk to every creator and decide what do you want to do? Do you want to do digital first? Do you want to do image? Do you want to do panel syndicate? Like what kind of thing do you think fits this best, our needs or our priorities with this book best? And to have that flexibility where over the years at DC, I always thought of creator owned as a place to do the stuff that kind of pushed the envelope creatively for me. And then DC was where I kind of got to do the stuff that I also love, which is the big, over the top, bombastic, widescreen, big fisted, full throated, heart on the sleeve, superhero, like epic stuff. But now that I'm away from DC, the reason that Nocterra was first, and just like you said, the reason I've been so eager for it to come out is because it's the first time I've been able to say with creator owned outside of DC or Vertigo, this is where I'm putting all of that energy in one place. So it's got like the kind of huge, robust, storytelling of the superhero stuff like Metal, but it's also dark and personal in the way that Wytches and that stuff is. So it's supposed to kind of say, I'm making a new home over here for a while. You can find everything that you like from me here. And then a lot of the books that I'm doing subsequently, whether it's Chain with Ariella Cristantina or some of the other ones that we'll announce later, push the envelope in very different ways and are things that you haven't seen me do. One is pure historical fiction. So no monsters, no
interesting.
Like no one, nothing like that. No monsters or whatever. And then another one is speculative. It's like sci-fi noir. Another one is part prose. And so I really wanted to take a year to be able to kind of creatively just be exciting to myself in a new way, and hopefully people will follow. So Nocterra, I've been dying to do it just because it announces the new phase of all this stuff, and the fact that people have responded as well as they have means a lot to me, because I understand how lucky I am to do this job. I understand there's so many good people coming in, I'm excited about too. So I've had a great long run, and I'm just grateful that people will still buy things from me after this long. I swear to you, like when I got into comics, the reason that I wrote Court of Owls the way I did, and then Detective the way I did, was because like I didn't write them as though there was going to be anything after them. For me, it was always like, this is my one shot and they're going to fire me and nobody's going to keep me after this. So I'll like write my 112 issue opus, good or bad, and like swing for the fence and get out. And it took me years to relax and be like, maybe they'll keep me a little while. So I've always had that complex in the back of my head about, knowing that you live and die by the fans, and that doesn't mean that you cater to them and at the expense of what you think is right with your stories. It just means understanding that if you're honest about what it is you want to do, what you love, why you love it, why it's important to you, that they'll follow you, and that if you don't and you're trying to chase something else, I feel like fans are so savvy, they see right through it. They'll be like, you're chasing that trend, or you're using that character to just to pander to me. I'm not into it.
You just have to write what's honest and what's true to you. To write stories that you want to read, basically. And I get that. And I mean, obviously, speaking about another title that you've been working on for quite a while, Undiscovered Country. And I've been reading it for like quite some time, and I think it's really such a good book. And I kind of feel that it didn't get the same sort of attention that Nocterra is getting at the moment. I mean, do you find that that's a book that, might blow up in a couple of years' time? I mean, sometimes you have those books versus like when it initially arrived, because there were stories around. I mean, I know obviously there were film rights attached to it, but I just kind of felt that Undiscovered Country didn't get the same sort of hype as Nocterra, and it's still a really great story. I think it's a book that a lot of people are sleeping on at the moment.
Oh yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I love that book, and that book, is built on a friendship between me and Charles and Camo, but me and Charles, going to different conventions together and making a habit of, both of us, I think, me in particular, I had a lot of social anxiety when I started in comics, and I was not comfortable going to conventions, was not comfortable being on panels. I was definitely not comfortable in the spotlight. And I think in the very first couple of years I was on Batman, that led to a lot of, just a lot of problems and self-destructive behavior privately, in my personal life and I was always, fans I was always happy to see and good and whatever at cons, but just there was a lot of I wasn't ready for it. I never expected it. Like the way I broke into comics wasn't I never, like when I came from, I always wanted to be in comics. I wanted to be a comic artist and writer. And then when I realized I went to college in Providence because I wanted to go to RISD. In addition to I went to Brown, but I wanted to go to RISD on the side, which they said you could do which is the Rhode Island School of Design. It's an art school to be able to learn to be a comic book writer and artist. And when I realized that I couldn't do that, and the classes were on a different schedule in this, and they also didn't have illustrative classes as much as they had, conceptual art stuff, I wound up falling into prose. But my first love was always comics, and so when I wound up breaking back in, I was so grateful. But I always felt like, A, I'd get kicked out again because I didn't know I'd ever make it, but B, that anything anything I got, it was going to take me forever to get anywhere near a character that I grew up with, and loved. And my favorite was Batman, So I was like, when I got to DC, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get a chance to write, Bat Hound in 2 years, and then Detective in 10 years if they keep me, which they won't. So I got there, wrote one issue of American Vampire, and they asked me, do you want to come pitch for superhero stuff? And I was like, sure. And there were a couple of things that were offered to me, like the Spectre and Firestorm and stuff like that. And I gave these pitches that they were a little off. I wanted to do really radical stuff with those characters at the time because I felt like they weren't not radical, but just a new Spectre. Yeah. Jim Corrigan was still going to be in the book, but it was going to be like somebody else is chosen and this kind of stuff. And Firestorm, I thought, needed a rethinking and stuff like that. And they weren't into it. And I was like, okay, yeah, there goes my superhero career. And then all of a sudden, Mike Martz called and was like, how'd you like to do the backups in Detective Comics with Paul Dini? And I was like, oh my God, I'm
of course.
And then literally a week later, Sergio, he was like, actually, Paul Dini is going to go do something else. Why don't you want to take the whole book? And I was not prepared for that, but I was like, of course I have to take this opportunity, And so I did, but I was so terrified the whole time and so just so racked with imposter syndrome. I had like serious anxiety and depression a lot of that year, and then in Batman the first year too, because I was just like, nothing in my private life, and now we have 3 kids. At the time, we had one kid who was very young. I was just like, I have to focus everything on this book. Everything has to be, how do I prove that I'm not a total fraud to myself on this book? And that was a very, I'm so proud of those stories of Black Mirror and Owls, but I don't look back on that period particularly fondly, to be honest. It was a very, and I was very lucky. Again, I'll never take for granted how lucky I was, but I just mean to make myself do those in the way that I did. My private life, like my family life, suffered a lot, and it was my fault for not having a balance. So, as we get closer now with this stuff, it's so celebratory. I feel like I've come to a place where I'm much more, I know how to balance it. I'm my own boss. I'm very excited about being able to say, these are books that make me doubly exciting to myself. I haven't tried things like them before, in the spirit of after death, things like that. And yet, some of them bring kind of all the kind of fun of the big over the top stuff I've done in the past to the pages of the work too. So
cool, man. So obviously you're saying with Charles as well in Undiscovered Country. What I'm getting from you,
I totally lost my thread.
That's cool.
I went down I lay back on a couch, the therapist couch, and got. Wait, let me explain. So Charles and I bonded during that time, that I was kind of going through a lot of stuff, and he was a good friend. And so one of the things that we did was we would always make a point at conventions to get out of the con space together. So we would go for a run, we'd go explore the city. So he's been a friend that would be like, hey, let's do our thing where we keep ourselves healthy. Let's go see the Washington Monument. Let's go see, if we're in New Orleans, let's go down to Beale Street and, that kind of stuff. So it was always like, how do you try and like be cognizant of not like falling down a rabbit hole into your own, worries and obsessions with comics. And so we talked about this book for a really long time. We came up with the idea when we were on a run we were like running together back in, 2018, 2017. And the reason I think that it didn't get quite the same attention was just because we were also sensitive about the idea of making a book that was, at the time we came up with it, and we started talking about it before the Trump presidency, but then we kind of solidified it right after Trump was elected. We were actually on a comic book cruise together. Now I remember, and right after the election, and we did this cruise. It was like am I going down too many corkscrew rabbit holes here? Is this?
Nah, it's good. Go for it, man. It's like,
I was about to tell you this cruise story where it was an amazing trip, but it was supposed to be a convention at sea. And the problem with a convention at sea is it has the creators and it has the fans, but then you're together for 7 days and it loses all of the middle ground of like the retailers and the weird Renaissance people and not they're weird, but you know what I mean? Like the cosplay booths and all that stuff isn't there. It's just you and them. So you get tired of each other by like 2 days in because they're like, I got your signature. I heard your stories. We're done. And then you're stuck on a boat. So because they didn't sell enough tickets, they invited all these people that were part of the cruise company's like list of cruisers, they call them. And they're like people that like just cruise all the time, that like live on cruise ships, essentially live in Tampa and whatever. And it was awesome because they were all these old people that just go on a cruise every week and it's themed differently. And they don't care where it goes. If it goes to Mexico, the Caribbean, wherever, out of Florida. And the one they had been on before was country music, and the one after the comic one was heavy metal. They didn't care. Oh, wow. They show up and they're like, I'm ready for my cosplay, and they were wearing like a sheet, like a ghost, or a cat.
Yeah.
Like that's not quite how it works. It's not like a costume. It's like a character. But it was so cute. It was so cute. But anyway, I remember being on this one with Charles and being like, let's do this book. The problem is like, national identity right now is like this third rail. Who we are has been like who we are as a country is now like ripped in half with people just so at odds with each other, and it's going to be a difficult road to drive, but let's just do it.
Yeah.
And so I think we tried to be cognizant of the fact that we didn't oversell the book or try and make it something that was like, this is a story about the soul of America at a moment when it was so divisive, and instead just do the book as a book about the soul of America. And if you're reading it now, and you get the third arc, the one we're working on now, I'm convinced is our best one. And we tried to kind of sublimate a lot of what the book was about beneath the kind of fun bombast of the book with like, fish creatures and starfish monsters and cyborg, But what it really is each zone they travel through is a different tenet of kind of the American identity and things that make up the DNA of who we are, but left isolated in an extreme so that element without the others to challenge it becomes monstrous. So you'll see each zone as a representation of something that's kind of baked into, I think, the American imagination as part of who we are and things we take pride in. But when isolated from things that undercut it or subvert it, socialism versus, Darwinistic capitalism, like all these things, when you either one alone in sort of the way we conceive ourselves becomes something slightly alien to ourselves, but each one needs to be a part of the whole. So anyway, like, it is a very American book, but I think one of the reasons that it's gotten less attention is because we wanted it to too, and to be able to say just have fun with it. It's about the story. It's about the characters, and it genuinely is. But it is also about the things that we think are important to remember about this moment. It's very engaged with, like, in our minds at least, whether it's obvious, with the zeitgeist and kind of the conversation about what we're supposed to stand for. Because ultimately, I forget who says it, which character, but we're writing this. Maybe it's the reason we're writing the screenplay for it too. And you know, Ace has this line in it, so I don't remember who has it in the comic or whatever, but they talk about America as this beautiful lie, you know, where it's built on these principles that are so inspiring, and yet it's constantly not only failing to live up to those principles, but almost like deliberately failing to, when it, you know, in these horrifying ways, and then suddenly taking a leap forward. And so the book is very much engaged in that, about, you know, so anyway, that's why I think, you know, Nocterra is much easier. Nocterra is a book that's like, it's deeply about this moment. I mean, it's about a darkness that separates us and changes us into things that are monstrous to each other and unrecognizable to each other, right? So it's what I see with my kids, and every day it's what I see culturally, politically, every day. But it's a much simpler kind of construction in terms of burying what it's about. The same way, like, you know, when I did 0 Year or that kind of thing, that book was very much about Batman in the moment, in the time of gun violence, the time of terrorism, the time of apocalyptic worries. All that stuff is in there. The visual imagery of war that's in the Middle East. All that stuff is meant to be, you know, part of what Batman is confronting. But you translate it into kind of the language of comic book lunacy, where you're like, and it's the Riddler with giant Riddler bots, you know, as terrorists. And it's the Red Hood gang as gun violence. And so there's a kind of translation that happens, whereas in Undiscovered Country, we tried very hard to do that, to translate it so that it wouldn't feel like we were beating you over the head in a moment that no one wanted to think about those things, that it was about that on the surface. So no,
look, I mean, I sincerely hope that it does, like, tend to pick up. I remember, like, back in the day when it was released and I was still writing for CBR, and I still remember I wrote a piece saying that, you know, it's got the potential to be the next big Walking Dead, and I can still see it now. I mean, it's like a spiraling story. But anyways, I want to get back to stuff, you know, go a little bit back in time. And I mean, you touched upon it a little bit, and it's definitely the New 52 run that you had with Greg Capullo. It was, for me, the Batman run that you had was actually the thing that brought me back into comics. You know, for quite some time, I mean, I was always into comics, and I mean, I was always, like, you know, picking up stuff. And there was a period probably in about the mid-2000s, I kind of veered off a little bit. Maybe it was just because, you know, I got into heavy metal and music, and I just kind of forgot all about comic books at this stage. But I remember, like, I still remember, like, getting back into, like, one of my friends said to me, you got to read the new Batman. You got to read the new Batman. And I started getting into it, and it really just sucked me in. And I know that it's something which, even nowadays, like, if we run a poll on Facebook or Twitter and we say, what's your favorite Batman run? And everyone still says, you know, Snyder and Capullo. That is, like, literally their favorite run of Batman the last couple of years, which is pretty impressive, because I must say, like, Tom King, his Batman, like, the spiraling arc was incredible. James' run at the moment is, I think it's also coming together. It's really incredible. And I want to say something, like, here, which came out a while back. Zack Snyder even said that, you know what, your Batman, the way that you wrote it, is an inspiration to him. How awesome was that to get from, like, a director like that to say, you know what you were doing basically, 10 years ago actually now, is what, you know, he's using as inspiration when he was creating this, like, big world.
Oh, I can't even wrap my head around it. I've been a fan of his forever. And I remember seeing Dawn of the Dead in the theater and being like, you know, this is before we're married. I was, like, dating my wife and being like, you know, why would anyone remake Dawn of the Dead? And then it was, like, so good. I was like, God, how did that even happen, that I now love this new Dawn of the Dead, because I'm such a big Romero fan. But it's kind of, I still haven't wrapped my head around it. You know, I think there's like a denial in it, where it's like you just keep going and not looking back because you're afraid when you look back you'll be overwhelmed by some of the things that are, you know, that are there. But I'm so excited for the Snyder cut of Justice League, and I don't post about that stuff a lot because I feel like there's such contention. But the bottom line is like there was so much I really enjoyed about the movies, and I'm always thrilled to see somebody do something that's either right up the alley of the stuff I like, or to do something that's wildly different than anything I'd expect. You know, I'm up for. The only thing I don't want is a boring take. That's really what that's like my thesis on Batman and on every character I love is like upset me, inspire me, do something that shakes me up in terms of the way I think about this character, but don't be boring. And that's why like when Tom came on Batman after me, his vision was so radically different than mine. You know, in terms of the whole kind of affection for Catwoman and his a lot of the kind of pathos in him. My Batman was very much built around the way I wanted my kids to see themselves in the post 9/11 era, which was, you know, I grew up with Frank Miller Batman and the sense of Batman as a character that was plagued by this kind of inner demons. And I love that Batman to death. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But it spoke to me in the 80s, especially, you know, when in year one and growing up in New York City in the Lower East Side, like there was a sense of, man, this Batman is saying we need to be able to kind of, you know, get rid of corruption, fight back, get the city back. You know, there was a very 80s kind of zeitgeist about that, good or bad. Now, I wanted to write something that was, you know, for my children in a post 9/11 era. They don't give a shit about, you know, the same things I worried about as a kid. Like,
it's changed. Everything's different.
Yeah, they're not worried about like the Cold War and Russia nuking us, like is in, you know, all over the Superman plot and Dark Knight Returns. They're worried about, you know, the grid falling apart and power outages, and they're worried about race, and they're worried about, you know, class and all of these things that are brought to the fore in great ways right now in terms of the conversation about America. And so it's writing to those things and for me, it was about making Batman a figure that wasn't about himself or about demons that he had after the first arc or two, which, you know, I wrote again about my own anxieties like owls. But once I was past that, it was more about writing about Batman is a figure that instead of kind of scaring bad people back into the shadows to take back the city, was about inspiring everyone to remember that they're brave together and being a brighter figure of that, and that 0 year and the stuff that follows it. And so Tom came in and did something really much more intimate about Batman's kind of psychology. And what I love about that, it was so different than mine that it's like you just don't compare them. It's apples and oranges. And James's and Tom's are apples and oranges. You know what I mean? They're not
completely
at all. Like they're the only thing I don't like, and that's what I'm going back to Zach about. And I went back and forth a little bit. I wish I had the time, but I'm just so buried in my own stuff. And there's many things that could pull me back to DC, and like that's certainly a temptation. When they called me actually and asked me if I would do the comic for Justice League do a comic spinoff of the movie. Yeah, you know, and it was like my kids want me to do this Fortnite one too because they love Fortnite, and I'm like, guys, like if I don't take this year, I'll never take a year. I have to do these like 9-10 books, get them up and running. This is like the books I've been thinking about for the last 10 years. Let me make them real. Because it's so tempting to go do DC or to do Marvel, to go do Wolverine. You know, I have a million stories in my head about Wolverine. I have a Hulk story. I have a Captain America one that I keep teasing. I've been pitching forever that I have to take some time to myself. But yes, I'm really excited to anything that Zach pulls from our stuff. You know, I'm honored, and I'm very excited to see his vision completed. I'm very sad to see just so much. You know, I don't know why sometimes it gets so heated online with his fans get so defensive about stuff, and then also, you know, it doesn't, like, I don't know. I hate to see the ugliness in general. That's it. I don't understand why. Like, you can hate his stuff or like his stuff or whatever it is. It's not. It doesn't matter.
It's a point of view. I mean, I actually had Greg Katzman, Valiant Comics marketing manager, on the podcast last week, and we were just discussing, you know, just general a little bit of nastiness. And one of the things that Greg says is that, a lot of people are not behaving like the heroes they're supposedly defending online sometimes, like the way that it is just, and, we had a nice discussion about the fact that, even with comic creators sometimes, there's a bit of mudslinging that takes place about, Snyder's movies and, what Zach's doing out there. And I just think, like your point of view is perfect. You're excited about something, you dig it, you're supportive, go ahead. And I think that's, it's a good attitude to have just in general towards all sorts of things. It's like, for example, you don't like a book that somebody's doing. That's totally fine. That book might not be for you. It might be for someone else, but there's no need to suck the joy out of it for somebody else.
No, I agree. And I think here's the thing to be clear about. And one of the reasons I feel like you and I have gotten along over the years is that, my feeling is I embrace and want constructive criticism for my work. The bigger you get, the harder it is to find. And the truth of the matter is, I try and surround myself with people that will tell me the truth about whether or not they think, I'm missing the mark when it comes to what I'm going for on my work. Not, is it fan pleasing or this or that? But if I say it's about this, is this what have I hit it, in that way? I like when people say, no, you haven't, and this is why not, and that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a healthy relationship. One of the things that's been hard for me, if we're talking like completely, on the record, but off the beltway, that, I've never thought of myself. I know this sounds stupid or corny or like I'm being false about it, but I'm not. As somebody that's, a comic book, like a comic star in any way whatsoever. I still have in my mind that mentality of getting kicked out at any moment. And so I feel really comfortable talking like this to you. I always have, like the same way to, so I get very, I forget sometimes, and this is my fault, that it can be intimidating for someone to reach out or say, like me, to somebody, well, what do you think of this? Or how does that, that? And I've certainly been at fault in that regard. And I think one of the things, especially in the last few years, as things have really gotten big with death metal and metal and all of that, is to be more aware of those things. But when it comes to the discourse online, I do try and get involved and be, I try very hard to not, to understand how many followers I have and to not jump in without thinking about it anymore. I used to be cavalier, like fighting with Rob Liefeld, who now I'm very close, I'm good friends with and all that, or fighting with
Tell him to unblock me. You must tell Rob to unblock me on Twitter because somebody like literally commented on one of like the articles I wrote about, I think it was Major X, and I was actually praising the book, and somebody like made some comments about the feet, that joke they always make about Rob Liefeld's feet, and he blocked me, but I'm like, Rob, it wasn't me, man. It wasn't me. So I still don't know what happened.
What you have to, it's a wild west, on Twitter with stuff.
Yeah.
I think, with this stuff though, like with there are things that I did not, there are things openly like I wasn't fond of in some of the movies, right?
Yeah.
There are things that I loved about the movies. And that's my opinion, and then there are things that are like, as an employee of DC, I try and be wary of like, do I jump on and say, you know what I loved, you know what I didn't love, like this and this and this.
Yeah, for sure.
If somebody asks me, I usually respond privately and say, hey, this is what I like, this is what I didn't. But it's not even protecting myself. It's just trying to be about, what is the point of this tweet, or what is the point of this? What is the point of this post? Am I saying it to be performative? Am I saying it to aggravate people or to show this or that? And to try and I'm trying harder and harder, especially in the last couple of years, to take things into account that I've never wanted to about being in a position of not just a privilege, I've tried to keep that in mind over the years, but more as of power with it, and not, just not instigate things that aren't worth it. And not give platform to things that I think are ugly. Meaning not even bother responding. Because I get a lot of ugly stuff from people that are like, "Why are you saying this when we know you feel this?" And I'm like, "No, you don't know me at all. I feel the way you don't think I feel the way I said I feel." Yeah. It's not worth giving them the oxygen sometimes.
The platform, yeah.
So it becomes, I don't know, man. It's really weird. it's very, it's uncharted territory where a lot of the time I'm not sure what the right thing is to do. And I rely on my friends like James Tynan, who's not only a brilliant writer and, I think has some of he's my favorite writer on the shelves right now between Department of Truth and something.
Oh, that's a great book. That's a great book. I'm loving it. But
he was my friend. He was my student when he was in college, and I was like just out of graduate school. So I've known him, 15 years, something like that. So relying on friends like that that'll tell you the honest truth and be like, just stay out of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you don't want to get into that thing. That
we're only friends like that.
Yeah, I just wish people would like. Maybe I'm getting into like bad territory here, but what I don't understand is like, I don't get the like. I love the fact that DC is taking some risks with characters, creator doing, and with DCYOU, with all kinds of stuff. Like that's one of the things that I loved about teaching, like bringing in new voices, all this stuff. I don't understand the negativity, like the towards the risk taking with these characters that are 75, 80 years old that are gonna, they'll always be the version that you like or that you had or whatever. What's the harm in trying something brand new and exciting? Like, I want my kids to have versions that feel particular to them. I want their friends to feel like they have things that are, risky in theirs. And, as you get old, I feel like you forget and you're like, that thing might have been risky at the time, but you forget and you're like, oh, well, that's so, and now I want everything the way it was when I was a kid. And
it doesn't happen that way.
Those were risks taken when you were a kid. And, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, and I don't understand I don't understand that. I think we should always be trying to push the envelope forward and to try things that are exciting and new for a new generation. And if you can't get behind that and say, like, there should be risks on Batman. We made Commissioner Gordon Batman. We tried to bring in all kinds of stuff. Like,
yeah,
then
it works. Some stuff works and like some stuff doesn't, but it's cool. I mean, I remember still at the time when I was reading that New 52 run where Commissioner Gordon was Batman. Initially, I didn't quite like it. Like, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not enjoying this. But by the end of it, like after I've seen the full picture, oh, okay, I get what you guys were doing, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually a pretty cool story. So for me, that was an example of like, okay, maybe I should just hang on a little bit, like see the bigger picture versus reacting right now. And I think that's sometimes our culture just in general that we have a culture that just reads a headline and reacts based to a headline. We don't even read deeper than that. We don't read like content. We don't research topics. It's like it's a headline and we react towards it. And I think that sometimes that's unfortunately the part of being online. It's the wild wild west, as you said. But anyway, Scott, I want to end this off on a really good note. And a really good note.
Stay a little longer too if you want to. So I don't want you to feel rushed. So I can.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm a talker, so I feel like I want to be able to answer everything you have. So don't worry about it. We can keep going for a little bit.
Cool, but yeah, I mean, for me, I think the one thing that I definitely want to touch upon, and it's for me something that I really, really enjoyed, and that's Wytches. I remember reading there was a single issue that you released a few years ago. I think it could be a few years ago. I mean, like maybe. Yeah, I think so. It was a while ago, but there was one specific issue, special edition. It was around Halloween or something, wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah, the Bad Egg about Sebastian, right?
That's one, yes. And I remember, like, I'd read like the Wytches, like I'd read one issue like several years before. Then I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. But for some reason, I never really, dived into it as much as I should have. It was one of those books that was just, those books that you have, like you have it in the back of your mind. I need to read this. It never happens. But I changed that last year. I went to a comic book store around Halloween and I said to myself, I'm going to buy myself something that, gets me into the Halloween mood and vibes, since obviously we couldn't really do much. And I picked up Wytches, and man, like I regret the fact that I had not picked it up earlier. It was incredible. And I need to speak about this book. Like, have you got any plans? Do you and Jock have any plans to tackle this again at some point?
Yes.
Like, carry on.
I'm going to tell you all kinds of stuff that I'm probably not supposed to, but I will go into it. So,
fantastic.
Yes. So what happened with Wytches was that we wrote the first arc, and then we were going to do the second arc, and Image approached us about introducing a character that was crucial to the second arc in the kind of backups in the Image Plus book. And we were like, yeah, sure, let's do that. So we did it, and then it took a while for that book to come out, and we love working on it. But the issue was it ate a year, and then Jock got a job doing concept art and costume design for Star Wars. So he did like The Last Jedi and some Rise of the Skywalker stuff, and so he would send me these pictures of like Mark Hamill wearing the robe thing, and I'm like, Wytches can wait. Wytches can wait. Just let
that's cool. Yeah.
Tell Mark Hamill I'm cool so that I can meet him in New York. And by the way, that didn't help, but I did meet Mark Hamill in New York with my kids, and it's the best picture I have on my wall from a few years ago where we met him backstage, and the con people brought us to him, and he knew who we were through Jock. And the funniest thing was they came to take him away. They're like, Mr. Hamill, you don't really have time for this. And he was like, I am not the Mark Hamill you're looking for, and waved his hand.
Amazing.
And I was like, that was all the kids were like, whoa, he's a Jedi. And so anyway, so what happened was that came in, that sort of that materialized for Jock. Then we were going to I wrote the outline for the arc. And then the people that had optioned Wytches for film, Plan B, company we love, they did World War Z and 12 Years a Slave, and they've just amazing stuff over the years. They came to us and were like, our option is up. We'd like to re-option it, but we're thinking maybe it would, now that you have more material between the Sebastian stuff and what you're planning, because we sent them the outline for the second arc, the official second arc for TV, we'd like to kind of go back out with it and think of it, re-upping as a television show. And would you guys like to be involved? And we were like, yeah, sure. And so it got kind of re-optioned in a great way where I'm writing the pilot and Jock is doing the concept art and all the art for it. So we've been really involved in Wytches in another medium where we're writing the arc that would be the second arc of the comics, but it's it's for TV.
Fantastic.
So it's pretty much designed and written. The issue, we just have to get back and be able to do it for Image. So I called Jock just 2 days ago and was like, listen, I know we both have a lot of stuff on our plate. We have another thing that we're doing for my Best Jacket thing where it's a prosy kind of thing where he's doing spot illustration stuff. But I was like, we've got to get back to it. It's silly because we keep thinking we're working on it because we're working on it in another medium, but we got to bring it back. So we will bring it back. It will be in early, it will not be in 2021. I can tell you that 100%, but in 2022, I can tell you 100% we will bring it back, and it will be, our best arc. I'm really proud of it. It's everything that it's all the stuff that we kind of, vetted and built during with this TV stuff, but it's Sebastian. The reason we introduced him in the special was because Sailor joins the Irons, which is the group that hunts witches around the world, and he's her mentor, and he's only 2 years older than her. And so
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it's not like a Hansel and Gretel thing, but it has echoes of that where the two of them are going around, and they just together they discover that they think they've found the location of the original burrow, the first witch, and they're going to go after that witch and try and destroy that witch to see if it kills the ecosystem of witches all over the country. But there are all kinds of different species. You learn about all of them, and it's a big arc. So it would be 7 or 8 issues. So anyway. That's
pretty awesome.
Yeah, so you're definitely coming back, and it's not something we've forgotten about. It's just that we're working on it in a different.
Yeah. You obviously mentioned that, you've been writing the pilot for the Wytches. You mentioned as well writing the screenplay for Undiscovered Country. Is film something that you obviously would like to get into? I see a lot of comic book writers going into it, and especially is one of the things that we always hear as well. Every time a new Batman movie is announced, the first thing comes to mind, get Scott Snyder to write it. Would that be something that you say, hell yeah, bring me on board?
Yeah, well, Jim at DC has been really kind about involving me in the video game stuff and some of the animated. But the truth of the matter is, and I know I'll shoot myself later for saying it, is that I don't really care about, screenplay and TV stuff unless it's a project that's really particular to me and the creative team. So it's not what I'm trying to say is this, my goal is not to move into that that medium. I don't want to. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be a screenwriter or a TV writer. That's not what I aspire to. I want to stay in comics forever, and that's why I have like more work than I can. My wife will murder me for taking on as much as I have for this year in terms of my own stuff. But when it comes to a special project like Wytches, or the opportunity to write Undiscovered Country with Charles, my friend, then I'll take those. But it will never preclude my writing comics. I'm not looking to leave to do that. Like, comics is not a stepping stone to something else. Comics is the something else. Like, that's my home. I've never wanted to do anything since I was 7, 8 years old, like my young son, other than comics. So no, you won't see me like disappear for 5 years to write a TV show. But, if there's a special thing like writing one of the projects for Best Jacket for screenplay, because I think it's something I would have a particular take on, I will do it on the side. But yeah, no, there's no priority higher than comics. Comics is my life forever.
Awesome, man. Scott, thanks so much. It's been really awesome. Like, we've had such a great chat and we've covered like so many different things. Like, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure it'll be the first of many chats. Like, we'll definitely be discussing all your new books because, Best Jacket looks like it's going to be something really cool. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, Sergio, thank you. in the late spring, early summer, like May, June, we'll announce a whole bunch of stuff. I'd love to come back and talk more, and anything that any talk you want to have, I'm happy to do. Now that I'm kind of on my own, I'd love to do this more frequently, and I feel bad. I feel like, again, like I gave such crazy long spiraling answers for everything that I want to make sure I covered everything you wanted to ask.
This was super entertaining. So we've covered so many different things, and I think you touched upon like literally every important book that we were going to mention already. So you've mentioned it, and we've gone different directions, which is fantastic. So I think people listening are going to love it. And that's the other thing. To everybody else listening, thank you so much for joining us. Let us know what you think of the show in the comments. Give us a like, subscribe, and let us know who else you'd like to see on the show and what other topics you'd like for us to cover. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll be back anytime you want.